Welcome to Beyond Just Business, the podcast for those who want more. More clarity, more direction, and potentially more meaning. We explore the thinking behind success, the habits that shape performance, and the questions that go deeper than profit margins. If you're ready to challenge the obvious and rethink the way life and business work, you are absolutely in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Just Business. This is season 2, and we're actually nearly at the close of season 2, Paul. I can't believe it at this stage.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
We're so close to the meaning of life. We might get
Sick and tired
maybe
talking
season
to
5. I'm trying to be nice on camera, to be honest with you, but the check cleared again this month, so I have to be nice to you. So you're all very welcome back. Today we're going to keep it as a bite-sized episode for anyone who is on a walk, waiting to go into a meeting, or just looking to decompress. Today we're going to have a short 20-minute or so podcast where we're going to be talking about should. Now, everyone, without me saying anything, is going to have an idea of what they think should means. But in this context, we're going to talk about the tyranny of the should. The should that you should do X, you should do Y, and the role that can play in people's lives, to a positive, something that maybe pushes someone to try something, but also to a negative, where you're living someone else's life. Paul, without further ado, when I say should, what comes to mind?
Immediately, the sentence for me is should to, have to, need to, because I keep repeating that to clients. But the three of them always go hand in hand. And actually, if you were to take that sentence in its own and start to go through your life and even keep a diary of your life or your week in a life and say, okay, so out of all the activities that you're doing, what are the ones that you feel you should do, you have to, or you need to do it? And then with that information, actually ask yourself, well, do you want to continue doing it? Because a should to, have to, need to will mean that you need an external stimulus. You need an external motivation. Or it's down to an obligation that you feel you have to do it, meaning should to, have to, need to. So therefore, what's controlling you is either a fear, shame, or guilt in order for you to do it. But actually, when you analyze it and say, well, do you want to continue doing those things? You'll actually remove an awful lot of stuff that you don't enjoy doing. And that's at a very top level.
Yeah, go on, carry on.
Yeah, so I was going to try and maybe pull an example. Say one from a societal perspective. So when you take your dog for a walk, and my dog's a big dog, you take your dog for a walk and big dogs equal big, fill in the blank. So you should do, have to, need to pick up the dirt after the dog. That's society. Now, there's some of those things that you can't really get away with because, yeah, you obviously do want to pick it up because now it's a want as opposed to should to, have to, need to. Like, I don't want to pick it up because the reason being is when I walk around in the evening time and now it's in the darker evenings, I don't want to be worried about, am I going to step in something? So there's a want of not wanting it to be there or other people's dogs stuff. And it's just funny how this conversation is going, isn't it? But anyway, that's what comes to mind. But then when it comes to business or work, there's still the same things in the sense of what are the things that you feel you should do, have to, or need to do.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I wasn't too sure where the dog shit thing was going, to be honest. I was thinking we're gonna have people listen to this and they're gonna be like, is he advocating for leaving dog mess all over the shop? And we're all walking around. You'll actually know someone who's enlightened because they smell the dog shit. Because they stepped in it. So, listeners, we advocate for cleaning up after your dog. I too have a huge dog. And we oh man, that's so funny. I was listening, I was like, just let it lie. What? I disassociate myself from this whole enterprise. Oh man, that was so funny. But although if we look at it the other way, that caught, so whoever's listening and was staring out the window and not paying attention, it got your attention now, didn't it? We're talking about dog mess. So, well, yeah, I agree
That's the
entirely.
title of this video now.
Yeah, What's ironic is you can transition into not picking up shit to taking shit from someone else, is in the job or in the office or doing the things you shouldn't do, shouldn't. But what is interesting is when someone books the trend of what should means, I also think it's, let's take an example, a queue, someone queuing for coffee.
Yeah.
We all automatically form a queue. And then you could have one person that just walks to the front and says, I'll have an Americano, please. And then everyone could be up in arms. But the concept of doing
You're not
that,
supposed to do that, no?
no, but that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
There's
shit.
the other, there's the other. Everyone's outside picking up after their dogs, so there's no queue in the coffee shop. You're just walking straight in. But when you think of the reason why, it's the funny thing is, should this kind of almost, here's this box of perceived responsibility, let's say other people's assumptions, beliefs, whatever it may be, and it's a case that, okay, welcome into the world. By the way, here's a box. Here's the general societal beliefs, and by the way, here's a couple that I have that you should be doing with your life, and off you go. So you should, people who are together with someone, you should get married. As
Yeah.
soon as you get engaged, when should the wedding be? As
Hmm.
soon as the wedding is over, congratulations. When do you think you're going to be having kids? And you're like, what is this like interplay with shoulds for everything though?
It is, yeah, because it's an external motivation or an external driver.
Is that the stuff that people push on you though? Is that an external version of you should be eating more? Go on, look after yourself. You should be eating more. Where
Hmm.
because mentally maybe I want to eat more. I have a poor self-image, or is that a show of kindness to want someone to do it?
You're on a touchy subject there because when your granny says you need your go on, should have another slice of cake because you need to have it. I think it's down to, I think there's a few different things. I think it's down to an element is that there's cultural society. So like that, and it's funny because when I was in the UK there a few weeks ago, I was asking people what drink that they want to have. An element of the Irishness came through because the rest of them were all between South African, Australian, American, and English. The way I was asking was very different to their culture. So some people would say, okay, no, I'm fine because out of politeness. Whereas I said, no, look, come on, I'm getting around. So let me just ask you, let me get you a drink or whatever it might be and so on. So that was the kind of the Irish culture coming through in terms of we don't, in those kind of circumstances, we tend not to say, tend not to take a no for an answer because in the element of, yeah, but are they really just out of politeness, they're saying no, they don't want something. Do you
Yeah,
follow what I mean?
Mrs.
And
Doyle style. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think there's an element of culture, but there's also an element of people putting overlaying their own perspectives onto somebody else and their own values onto somebody else. And that's where the harm can be done.
And is that because someone does it unconsciously? So you could have someone that has always done something a certain way, and when you dig into it, you realize that's just the way it always was.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because I've seen a few videos over the years whereby, like that, somebody cuts the head and tail off the fish
Mm.
and it's carried down through generations. And it's not until the great grandchild asks the great grandmother, why do you top and tail the fish? And the reason being is because the original fish never fitted in the oven.
Mm.
So it's that kind of thing that we tend not to question people's beliefs and why some people do certain things in certain ways. But equally, we perceive based on our own makeup, we perceive other people should live in a particular way because it'd be more aligned to our values and our own beliefs. And when somebody steps out of that, now that's when the should tos, have tos, need tos start to come into play.
And is that an internal fear or like conforming? So let's say if someone says, I don't want to do something, like let's say go back to drink, that people who choose not to drink and whatever else, and in someone else's mind, they can't wrap their head around the concept of it. Now that could be anything. That could be someone who doesn't play golf, doesn't play bridge, doesn't they like ketchup with every meal, whatever. But where in society, it's an interesting one because when you think about it, and actually Gary Vaynerchuk had a very interesting point about this is that he cannot abide people who have those "My kids are in Harvard" stickers on the back of a car. And
Right.
he's like, why have you got a sticker telling everyone? Is that a metric of success, like a metric of your parenting ability?
Yeah.
Like, great parents don't mean great students. Bad parents don't mean bad students.
Yeah.
But I think to him, that was the systemic element or systemic representation of all the shoulds that you roll up into one, which is my child goes to such and such an educational facility, whatever it may be. Therefore, I did everything I should have done, and they're now giving the outward version of what success may be. That, I find that like when I think of what I want my kids to be kind and resilient. And like outside of that, I'm not saying I want them to do nothing. That's not the case. But I think of the shoulds of life of anything. Like I quite challenge it now, and I think I would have been very, oh, let's just keep going. Let's not be contrarian. And one of the things that I found really enjoyable last week was I had a coffee with a guy, and we were talking about education. And I happened to say, like, my viewpoint of, I don't hold much stock. I said, I see these things changing. I wonder about homeschooling or whatever. And his eyes lit up, and he mentioned a book he'd be looking at. And I thought, wow, here we go. Here's a great conversation. And it wasn't about being judgy. It wasn't about
Mm.
you're going to such and such a prominent school. What about this? What about that? It was a real open, flexible conversation about what would it look like if,
Yeah,
rather than, no, you can't, homeschooling, but you did this in this school, and like your version of that has to be this version. Everyone went here and everyone did this. And I was like, I'm okay, thanks. But
mm.
what I loved about it was, like, and even afterwards it resonated with me, and I loved the concept. And he sent me on a podcast about someone, and if he's happening to listen to this, he'll probably know who it is. But he sent me on a podcast about a guy who looked at how we all live our lives. He was a multimillionaire, loads of money, and he sold it all, and he now lives in another part of the world because what's the stuff about? I'm here, I get
Yeah.
to live with my kids, I get to do all this stuff. And the shoulds, he had all the shoulds.
Mm.
And he kind of said, no, you're okay, thanks. And now he's outside the lines almost.
Yeah, because we don't break the mold. The vast majority of people
Yeah.
don't tend to break the mold because, again, part of that is wanting to fit in as well. That if I do something different, whether it be in business or in life or the car that I drive or the school that the kids go to and so on, if I step out of those lines, then how will other people perceive me? That's fundamentally what's going on underneath. So
Yeah.
they're reluctant to break the mold or to color outside the lines.
But you look at COVID even like that now, when I think of that, best exercise in my that ever happened to
Was
me
yeah,
was seeing that. And in my lifetime now, obviously I can't convey how that feels for my kids, but I will never do the stuff that people think I'm supposed to do ever again just because they tell me to do it. And I don't mean that because I'm not going to wake up and have a default contrarian outlook on everything, but I'm going to have a view of, I'm going to look at this and be like, what's up here? What am I doing? It doesn't have to be COVID, but
it's question it.
questioning it.
Yeah,
And I think questioning everything by virtue of what's funny, there's a movie with Adam Sandler called Waterboy. Don't know if you've ever seen it, where he basically his mother is Kathy Bates, who plays it really well. Anyone who saw her in movies, she did some great movies. But basically, anytime he asked her anything, she homeschooled him and told him that she created electricity. Football is the devil, all this kind of stuff. So when he went to school, he was in college. He puts his hand up to ask the question, why do these people do these things? Mama said that crocodiles aren't happy because they have all them teeth and no toothbrush. And the teacher says, no. But the reason I give that example, and anyone who likes movies, please send me a message to say you understood that movie reference. But the reason I say it is that her should was, I'm going to protect this kid from the world and tell him all the things that I think he needs to know
Hmm.
without being okay with the messiness that is all these unknowns and trying things and challenge them and being wrong. But if you imagine the other version of COVID, like, if we're all told not to go into that field and one person jumps over the fence and goes into the field, then two people do it, like going onto a pitch at the end of a match, at what stage is it that acceptability for people where they go from, oh, I can't do that,
Hmm.
to, I'd love to run on the pitch. But then suddenly, if you didn't run on the pitch, everyone else has gone onto the pitch. But it's,
Yeah,
like, when I
yeah,
think of
yeah.
it that way, it's like you're an early adopter who does these things, thinks outside the lines, tries something different, and everyone thinks you're nuts.
Hmm.
Then someone else does it, and you're not as nuts. But then enough people do it where that becomes the should.
Commonplace. Yeah, yeah.
But that just replaces it with a different should, though, doesn't it?
How?
So let's say we'll use the football analogy. I'm in the stands and one person jumps over and decides to jump after. I don't know anything about football, so whoever's famous
Right.
at the time. I would say David Beckham, but I don't think he plays
I
anymore.
don't think he plays
And
anymore.
but also, for anyone who goes to try and convert me, I don't care. So don't send me a message about football. Anyway, one person jumps out and they're crazy. They get
Yeah.
taken down, whatever. Then another person does it, and then the match is over, and then everyone leaves the stands and they're all on the field. So say if I'm sitting in the stands on my own, looking at it, kind of going from an if internally, if I say I actually don't want to go on the field, so I'm not bothered. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But if everyone's left, the field becomes the next should of, oh, everyone's gone and done this, you should do this.
It becomes a potential, yeah, potential should to. But
Jeez,
if
that was a
you're,
great look at that. I'm full of ideas today. That's phenomenal. That's a mind-blowing idea, isn't
that was
it?
a great analogy.
Listen, movie references and football references. We're hitting all the categories here.
But the fundamental question was, okay, if you're still sitting on the benches, looking at the people in the field, you're still choosing as regards whether you go there or not.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's still a choice. So therefore, if you decide, actually, no, I don't feel like going on the pitch, now it's no longer a should to. If you're doing it for somebody else, now it's a self-esteem. So now you're doing it in order to please somebody else because now you feel that's the way of being accepted by your peers, as opposed to, actually, no, I just want to sit on the bench. That's what I want to do. That's what I choose to do. That's self-worth as opposed to self-esteem. So now you're no longer adhering to the should have tos, need tos.
And do you think it makes, do you meet a lot of people who would be incredibly uncomfortable in those situations
Oh God,
because,
yeah. And it's amazing to observe, but you'll observe it so many different ways in reality shows or in, like mentioned before about Traitors Ireland and so on, and you can see the should tos have tos need to play out there. But you'll observe it in real life in different situations. Yeah. So you don't even have to get into their head. You can just observe people doing it.
which is very interesting because I think, I suppose maybe it's that not that I'm at an impasse in life, but I suppose I'm at that reference point where when you're 18, 19, 20, 40 is so beyond you that you can't fathom it, but you probably have the perception that you'll absolutely understand everything that's meant to work the way it's meant. So you almost think you'll have it all licked. But when I think of it now, and I think of why people do certain things, I can see a lot of people who do things because they should. And the outlier is the people who did things for themselves, but they fall outside the line. So either that they're seen as an outlier, as in, oh, that was the one person who did very well by being weird,
Yeah.
or they're in such a space that they almost are forgotten about. So let's say if you got a bunch of people that are in corporate and you got someone who's in a traditional knitting factory, the person in the knitting factory is never going to meet the corporate.
Yeah.
Never the two shall meet.
Yeah.
But what I find, what I'd love to ask people is what's that real fear? Like I sometimes wonder, do people think if they continue to do what they should do, is there some sort of a perceived safety net as to the way things are going to play out? Or is it that no one got them to flex that muscle from a young age? Because if you have a household and you start to do things from a young age, they're exposed to different things. It could just be that someone has a weight in the corner and they see the weight and they pick it up. They're exposed to this idea of what exercise is. They're exposed to the idea of speaking a different language, almost like
Yeah.
dual language families. I wonder is that they, from a young age, have been taught by someone else has been taught. No, well, this is like you said with the fish. It's not right and it's not wrong, but no one's taught to ask the question.
Yeah. Yeah. And another example that comes to mind is where, like, I would have had this with the kids growing up. You try different foods with them, or you go to a restaurant and you're like, I'll always try and pick something off the menu that I haven't tried before
Yeah.
because I have this rule of just trying something new. And with the kids,
Except mushrooms, because they're gross.
what?
Except mushrooms, because they're
Oh
gross.
yeah, you and your mushrooms. What was I going to say to you? Now you've lost my train of thought.
Make a point of trying something different.
Yeah, so with the kids growing up, you'd try different foods with them. But for somebody to turn around and say, no, I don't like that, but they've never even tasted it, that does my head in. That literally will do my head in.
Yeah.
You got to try it and then make the decision as regards whether you like it or not, don't like it. It's just a
Yeah.
perception that you've picked up from other people that other people don't like it, so you perceive you don't like it. So it's all about trying to fit in. It's all about what will other people think if I do certain things in different ways to somebody else. But actually, funny enough, the more you look at, let's just bring it back to business, the more you look at business to make a success out of business, the more you do things differently, the majority of those companies will actually succeed extremely well because they're doing something different compared to everybody else.
I think that's a fascinating way to end this because I want to leave people on a knife edge of wondering, do I actually like mushrooms or not? And I'm joking. I want people to find out. I think if you're looking at the should, someone who's listening to this absolutely has done something in the last 5 years that they should do rather than maybe wanted to do.
Mm.
So with this bite-sized podcast, I would like to challenge someone to ask themselves this question. If you want to, you can send it to us anonymously and just say, this is something I did because I thought I was supposed to. And again, like you said with the menu analogy, it's a fascinating insight into when you look at the breadcrumbs and all the things you were doing over your life, why you did it, what you did it for, who you did it for, and what would you do differently. Because the great thing is, and hopefully this conversation will spark it, is you can stop and do something different right now. Like you can step outside and take a left instead of a right or a right instead of a left and try that bit of a different, something different. And I think to your point, your previous point was when you think about how little people actually think about you, you realize that it's all to play for in
Mm.
doing what you should, do what you want to do. And everyone's interpretation of that will be different, but I think that's an interesting point to leave. You have any last points before we round off, Paul?
Sounds good, but yeah, never ask Andrew for mushrooms.
Yeah, that's a perfect
If
way
you
to think.
really want to get to him, yeah, make sure you just mix the mushrooms in with his dinner.
Let's talk to my mother-in-law. That's what she seems to do. 20 years of hiding them and stuff. But on that note, I hope we found this bite-sized podcast interesting. The goal behind these conversations, as always with Paul, is to open your mind, expand your thinking, get you looking beyond what you feel is your current capacity, because you can always do more. There is so much more potential in you and the world around you. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like covered, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Hello at Beyond Just Business. But we'll leave it there, and we look forward to catching up next time. And that's it for another episode of Beyond Just Business. If it gave you something to think about, or it helped you see things a little differently, we're delighted. But make sure you're following so you don't miss out on the next episode. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you next time.